Opportunity Zones, Opportunity Zones. Andy, we're live. Opportunity Zones. Go ahead, bud.
Welcome to OZ NewsHour. I'm Andy Hagans here with Jimmy Atkinson. Today is September 30th, 2024. The Detroit Tigers have made the playoffs for the first time since 2014, and we are covering the most important stories in the world of Opportunity Zones.
We're talking about Opportunity Zones. We're talking about Opportunity Zones.
Andy, we're going to be talking about Opportunity Zones a lot in just a minute here. But first, we have an important announcement to get through. So, are you looking to take your Opportunity Zone strategy to the next level, but maybe you're not sure where to go? OZ Insiders offers comprehensive premium content and networking to help you get started. Our monthly masterclass meetings cover a wide range of topics from fundamentals to advanced, ensuring that you have what you need to thrive. As a member of OZ Insiders, you'll get access to our exclusive online community and monthly group masterclass calls, providing you with valuable OZ networking opportunities and guidance from the very best Opportunity Zone professionals in the industry. So whether you're a beginner, you're new to Opportunity Zones, or maybe you've been in the industry a while and you're looking to get to the next level, we have what you need at OZ Insiders. Visit OZinsiders.com to learn more. That's OZinsiders.com. Andy, back to you.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. And, so much going on with OZ Insiders that we're going to talk about later in the show. But for our lead story, every once in a while in an industry, something happens that totally changes the game. I'm talking about like a complete paradigm shift. And Jimmy, I think last week we had one of those days in the Opportunity Zones industry when we announced our rebrand, and OpportunityDB rebranded as OpportunityZones.com. It was a long time coming. We've been after this domain name for about half a decade, maybe a little longer. Jimmy, tell us about OpportunityZones.com.
Yeah, well, I first learned about Opportunity Zones in July of 2018, and that night, I think it was July 31st, 2018, I went to register a domain name because I wanted to start a website about Opportunity Zones. And well, unfortunately, OpportunityZones.com was not available. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to put together a database of all of the Opportunity Zones and all of the Opportunity Zone funds that are available to investors. So I'll call it OpportunityDB. And OpportunityDB has been a great brand name. It's served us well for the last 6 years, but I've always kept my eye on acquiring that premium domain name, and the OpportunityZones.com. It does roll off the tongue a little bit nicer than OpportunityDB : the Opportunity Zones database, I think. So earlier this month, at the beginning of September, we finally did acquire the domain name after a few years of back and forth and trying to snag it. We were finally able to grab it, and we made the switch just late last week. OpportunityDB is now OpportunityZones.com. Same great website, a little bit of a refreshed and improved design here and there around the edges. And we're going to still offer the same content that we always have. Our 3 times annual OZ Pitch Day, which we'll talk about a little bit later today. Our ongoing webinar series, our ongoing Opportunity Zones podcast, industry leading podcast, and all of the other guides and content that we offer for free to investors and operators in the space alike. Andy, what do you think of the new name?
Well, I love it, and I love my new mug. For the viewers at home,
mugs are great.
Yeah, it says OpportunityZones.com on the mug. These were printed by Vistaprint, and yeah, when you look at my mug, the logo is a little bit crooked, but that's okay. Vistaprint, I ain't mad at you. My old mentor, my original mentor, business mentor, told me, good, fast, and cheap. Pick 2 out of 3. You can't have all 3. Well, Vistaprint, you were fast and you were cheap. And so even if you put the logo like on the bottom of the mug, I wouldn't have cared. This is a great mug, has our logo. I'm excited about that. And Jimmy, another thing, it's not just the name. As part of the rebrand, you went into our website and you did a spring cleaning. I got to be honest, when you have a website for 5-6 years and you're continually running it over this time, I mean, maybe some of you webmasters in our listenership can commiserate with this, but it gets a little bit cluttered over time, right? Little pieces of code, little pieces of content, little site features that maybe you try out, you test out, then they get abandoned. It gets cluttered, and the back end of our website was like so cluttered I could barely walk, right? It was like an episode of Hoarders. And what Jimmy did is he went in there, he decluttered the whole thing, he loaded up the van and drove it all to Goodwill and just dropped it off, right? And we have a fresh, streamlined website with a streamlined, refreshed fund directory and just a lot of the new sections, the map section, the guides are updated and leaner, faster loading, etc. So please, by all means, also check out the new and improved website. We also have kind of a site tour on the homepage. Jimmy, I know that's racking up some views, that video.
Yep.
Jimmy, thank you for all of the work you put into this. I know you worked some overtime for the past several weeks to make all this happen.
Well, somebody had to do it, and I figured I was the best man for the job. Since we're only just a 2-man company here, Andy, so not a lot of manpower to go into this. I'm just incredibly grateful that basically to all of our followers over the last 6 years. Thank you for following us, and thank you for continuing to support OpportunityDB during our ramp up period, our period of growth, and our recent period of relative stability. And we're really pleased to have this new domain name and this brand new brand name. OpportunityDB is now OpportunityZones.com. In case you're just joining us, welcome. This is OZ NewsHour. We shoot these the last Monday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're live, and we do want some interaction from our audience. If you have any comments or questions about any Opportunity Zones news stories or anything OZ related, just go ahead and hop into that live chat wherever you're watching, whether you're on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and type in a comment or question, and we'll try to get to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Jimmy, you've been running these office hours where you're doing interactive Q&A. I know the first one that you ran was a big hit. You got so many questions, you didn't even get through them all. When is the next office hours live stream scheduled?
Yeah, good question, Andy. So this is our new refreshed YouTube page. We just crossed the 3,000 subscriber threshold. We've got close to 400 videos up there now. A lot of podcast episodes, webinars, OZ Pitch Day segments, etc. Here's our most recent office hours right here. Office hours with Jimmy Atkinson. We streamed this 3 weeks ago. We do these the first Monday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So our next one will be coming up next Monday, October 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. I come into the show with no agenda. I just pretty much open my door and I ask you, the audience, what questions do you have about Opportunity Zones? Anything about structuring an OZ deal, anything about the map, anything about legislation or regulations, or, the 10-year hold or the tax benefits, anything you can think of, throw it at me and I'll do my best to answer all of your questions live on air during the live stream. That's Opportunity Zones office hours, Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern time.
Right on, Jimmy. I love it. We got some great comments on OZ NewsHour last time we ran the show. So if you're watching live, be sure to interact in YouTube, in our YouTube chat. And of course, Jimmy, I'll be at the next office hours because I like getting my questions answered, especially in that format. I try and stump you, a little bit, but
somebody's got to, yeah.
I don't think anyone has yet. Jimmy, for our next story, I want to talk a little bit of macro.
Sure.
Okay. There's really, we've had so much macro news even since last month. Obviously, last month when we recorded OZ NewsHour, everyone and their cousin was expecting, right, the interest rate cut, which did happen. And now it feels like really the tide is turning, to me, in the sense of you're seeing loan rates go down in real time, right? They've dropped significantly, even since 3 months ago. And you're starting to see a little bit more activity in certain asset classes of commercial real estate. So, Jimmy, do you think that we've passed the inflection point? Do you think that the worst is behind us in terms of the slowdown in commercial real estate that also, reverberated across the Opportunity Zone industry?
Yeah, the worst is behind us for now. I think capital markets transactions flows should pick up here toward the end of the year. And I think throughout 2025 as well. I can't really see too much further out beyond that. And of course, this comes with a caveat. You never know when you might happen upon another black swan event or a recession. But at least for now, the Fed just cut interest rates by 50 basis points about a week and a half ago. A little bit too soon to tell what has transpired since then. But Andy, just anecdotally, you and I have both seen loan rates on commercial real estate loans drop quite a bit in the weeks and months leading up to that too, because a lot of that was already priced into the market. Now, how many more cuts are we going to get between now and the end of the year? I think that the next Fed funds at the next Fed meeting of the FOMC, I should say, we might get another rate cut, possibly 25 basis points, maybe outside chance of another 50 basis point cut. We'll see how many more cuts and what the rate looks like at the end of the year. But I think we probably still have at least one or two more cuts to come, totaling maybe 25, 50 or more basis points. So I think all that does is it just makes the cost of capital cheaper. It makes commercial real estate deals much more feasible. And so I do expect things to pick up in the capital markets here, Andy, toward the end of the year for sure.
Yeah, so just a couple comments that I heard through the grapevine. One, just looking at a deal and hearing a broker make the comment, I haven't seen that interest rate in years. So, the banks react in real time, and they are getting way more aggressive on their terms. Another thing, I was speaking to a developer about multifamily, and I asked him, are deals going to start to pencil again with better interest rates? And he said, maybe, but the limiting factor now isn't interest rate; it's just cost to build, right? So to him, at least in his region in which he operates, just labor and materials. And I do think it's with interest rates, let's contextualize them, right? They were very, very low, and then they were maybe a little bit high, but they weren't really that high relative to, let's say, 50 or 50-year historical perspective, right, Jimmy? Now they sort of feel to me like they're normal, right? Like if interest rates dropped, let's say 150 basis points from here, then I think we'd be back to this sort of ultra low range and almost fueling the next bubble. So maybe with one or two more cuts, nothing too crazy. We're just sort of in a new normal. I don't know. That's my 2 cents. Take it for what it's worth. We're getting a couple of comments in the live stream. There were 5, 7, and 10-year basis. What happens if an investor holds its investment for 5 or 7 years?
Well, I can take this one. This one's from Arnest Dancy. They were 5, 7, and 10-year basis step ups essentially with opportunity zone investing. So Arnest, the 5-year and the 7-year basis step up benefits have expired. The 7-year benefit expired at the end of 2019, and the 5-year expired at the end of 2021. So what happens if an investor holds its investment for 5 or 7 years? At this point, nothing. So there's no special anything that happens at the 5 or 7 year mark if you put money in today, or if you put money in at any point in time beyond the end of 2021. Now, if you're an investor in a fund and you made your investment into that qualified opportunity fund before 2021, then when you get to that 5-year or 7-year anniversary, you get either a 10% or a 15% basis step up on the value of your investment. So it essentially reduces your tax liability in 2026 by that amount. I won't get into too much detail on that because I can get really bogged down in the weeds chasing that one, Andy. But suffice it to say that the 5 and 7 year benefits are gone. Now the 10-year benefit is still available, and that's available for any gains recognized prior to the end of 2026, invested timely in a qualified opportunity fund. There's no capital gains tax liability on the appreciation of your OZ investment. That one's still around, that big 10-year benefit. Good question though, Arnest.
And Arnest, next, again, 1 week from today, 3:00 Eastern, attend the office hours. This show, we mainly discuss news, but we do interactive chat and comments. But 1 week from today, it's just all straight up Q&A with Jimmy. So he'll be answering a dozen or more questions just like yours. Jimmy, one other, note about, macro and the market. I'm noticing, the stock market keeps bumping against all-time highs. And you and I had the opportunity to look at some interesting proprietary research. We can't necessarily share all of the details because it was proprietary, but it was pretty interesting. The research that an Opportunity Zone sponsor allowed us to take a peek at, right?
Yeah, it was. And I will share a few select slides that they gave me permission to share. This is from an Opportunity Zone fund sponsor that we're not going to name, but and I'll walk you through this and hopefully it'll take me just a minute or two. But essentially you're looking at 3 different data points here, month by month, dating back to the beginning of 2019. These green dots are, and all these values are normalized, by the way. The regression analysis run by this sponsor. The green dots represent the amount of fundraising that they performed during that period. The yellow represents the federal funds rate. So you may recall, in 2019 and 2020, the federal funds rate actually kind of spiked up a little bit during COVID, and then it went back down to zero before it started rising again in 2022, right? This slide's marked today, 9/5/24. This is when we had our conversation with them, obviously a couple weeks before the interest rates were eventually dropped. Now, this blue line represents the stock market. And in this case, they're looking at the NASDAQ 100 index. And what they found was that as the delta between the NASDAQ 100 index and the Fed rate increased, they had more fundraising activity. And as those became inverted, as the Fed fund rate went up and the NASDAQ relative to the Fed fund rate kind of stayed the same or may have come down, but the delta kind of inverted and it was a negative delta, fundraising really trailed off. And then they ran a couple of different scenarios. That's the word I'm looking for. So one asked, okay, what if the Fed cuts rates by just 25 basis points and there's no change in the NASDAQ 100 index? This last data point's really the one we're looking at here. So compare it to today. They had a delta of minus 0.64. The delta would change to minus 0.55, very similar to where it was during some peak fundraising activity in 2019 and 2020. And if the Fed rate cuts by 50 basis points, you can see the delta almost starts to turn positive here, which is even more favorable than it was back in 2019, 2020. Now, I don't know if I want to look into this data too much. I think it's correlation, right? But it's not necessarily causation. I think another thing that may impact opportunity zone investing is, frankly, Andy, the value of the benefit is not as great today as it was in 2019 and 2020, simply because of the fact that the deferral date is much closer now. The 2026 date's much closer than it was back then. But I still thought it was an interesting multivariate regression analysis. And I appreciated the time that we were able to spend with this sponsor. Andy, do you have any thoughts or takeaways on that study?
No, and Jimmy, I take your point that, that deferral benefit is worth less. And we're going to talk about the election, what election? There's an election. We're going to talk about the election later on.
Was that Prime Minister?
But as you have pointed out, I think that there is a catalyst, regardless of who is elected, that may inject some energy into the Opportunity Zones program or our industry, because either Trump will be elected and the prospects for the Opportunity Zones program to be reformed and extended go way, way up. Or if Kamala Harris is elected, and let's say the Democrats, sweep Congress, or really either way, even if just she's elected, we can all expect taxes to go up. And so then the relative value of all of these kind of tax mitigation programs or tax advantaged investment programs, their relative value increases. And so I think there might be increased focus on next year's, opportunities to invest even next year in OZs, regardless. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I like election season just because it's exciting. But more on that later in the show. And also thank you to that sponsor for letting us take a peek into that proprietary research and share some highlights with our listeners and viewers. Jimmy, I want to talk next about OZ Insiders, our recent schedule, our upcoming schedule, because we have so much going on in this mastermind group. First of all, our most recent masterclass was with friend of the show, Angela Wong. Jimmy, tell us about this masterclass. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm at OZinsiders.com right now. Clicked over to calendar. You can see our calendar of upcoming events here, but you wanted to hear about Angela Wong. One of the best parts about OZ Insiders is these master classes that our members get exclusive access to. But if you missed any of them, don't worry, we record them all too. So you can log in and watch them on demand inside your members only dashboard. So Angela kind of followed up on the August masterclass we had, which Crystal Rutkowski was the instructor for. She taught a masterclass on raising capital from RIAs and broker dealers. Angela then followed up by instructing our group, here's how you raise capital directly from investors. The two different ways of raising that retail capital. One is to go through the RIA broker dealer channel, get to the advisors, get to the people who manage wealthy individuals' money. But the other one is just go straight directly to the wealthy individual themselves. So Angela covered that. It was a great class. And it didn't pertain necessarily specifically to opportunity zones. It really kind of covered, I would say, it was a masterclass in raising capital for any type of private placement fund, particularly real estate, but it could really apply. The lesson she taught could really apply to any type of private placement fund. She did have some OZ specific tips, definitely, from the point of view of an operator or a developer who's raising capital from investors. Opportunity zones offer a unique, I call it marketing angle, to target certain class of retail high net worth investors who are into wanting to save taxes, and particularly wanting to save taxes on capital gains. So Angela went into great detail about that. It was a terrific class. Andy, you were there. I know you caught it all. What did you think of Angela and her class?
I mean, I think we're a lucky group to have speakers of her and, Crystal's caliber to share this knowledge. And those two, I think all of our master classes have been fantastic, but the last few meetings have really been gaining steam in terms of attendance. It's sometimes when you launch groups like these, the attendance will kind of fall off over time. With our group, it's sort of been the opposite, especially with some of these topics we've been covering recently. Seems like there's been increased engagement and attendance even during the live meeting. And then I know, of course, that a lot of our members watch the recordings. So certainly for any professionals who are working in the space, these master classes are super valuable. And Jimmy, I know we have a great master class upcoming here in a couple of weeks. And then you also have an in-person event that I know a lot of people are excited about. That's
right. If I can just touch on our next 3 events coming up, we have Chris Loeffler joining us. He'll be instructing our masterclass in October on Monday, October 14th, 3 p.m. Eastern time. He's going to be giving a presentation on distressed opportunity zone real estate investing strategies. Chris Loeffler is the founder and CEO of the very successful, one of the largest opportunity zone funds in the country, Caliber. On Tuesday, November 5th, which happens to be election night, in Washington, D.C., the day before the big Novogradac OZ Summit, my OZ insiders and some select others who are in town that day are going to be meeting up for a private dinner at Riss Restaurant right around the corner from where the Novogradac Opportunity Zone Summit will take place the next morning. We do have limited seating at this event. I think we already have 14 people who have RSVP'd. Yes, I've got a cap at 20. So if you're an OZ Insiders member and you're watching this and you're not sure if you've RSVP'd yet or not, make sure you send me an email or go to our RSVP page and RSVP for this thing before it fills up. If you're not yet an OZ Insiders member, but you're planning on being in Washington, D.C., and you'd like to join our group for dinner the night before, please head on over to OZinsiders.com to learn more about getting started with OZ Insiders membership. It's going to be a great evening of camaraderie and networking. We might watch the election. One person who's coming warned against having the election on TV because he thought it might divide the room a little bit. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's going to be a wild and crazy night either way, and dinner should be delicious. So, and here's where the location is relative to the Fairmont Hotel, where the OZ Summit will be the next morning. Just a 5-minute walk around the corner. One more class we got coming up, which I'll mention because it's going to cover the election, and it's going to cover what has happened a week after Election Day. Hopefully we'll know who won by then. There's a chance we won't. But Emily Lavery, who was formerly in Senator Tim Scott's office, will be joining us and instructing our masterclass that day. She's going to give a class on the election post-mortem outcome and what she expects to see in tax legislation and how tax legislation may or may not include an Opportunity Zones extension in 2025. So Andy, that's what we have coming up around the corner here at OZ Insiders. And again, you can learn more about our networking group, our mastermind group, by heading over to ozinsiders.com.
Absolutely. And for anyone in the live stream, I know we have several people in the live stream. If you have any questions about OZ Insiders or these events, or just any questions about the election, we're about to talk about that in our next few segments. Please, join the chat, ask your questions, make your comments. We want this to be interactive. And Jimmy, I think we just got
we got a comment here from Arnold who says, watch the election, take bets, and plot your forward strategy that night for the next 4 years. So that's good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. You never want to think that your business strategy depends entirely on an election, and I don't think it does. But there's no in real estate, but there's no question though that this is going to be a pivotal election for professionals in the Opportunity Zones industry, or even investors who are focused on an Opportunity Zones strategy. Regardless, either way, it will be an important election. That is for sure. Jimmy, for our next story, you have a tip of the cap, I believe, for the U.S. Navy. Is that right?
I think we wanted to cover the Wyoming Reserve, right?
Oh yeah. Let's do the Wyoming Reserve.
Let's do the Wyoming Reserve first. So the Wyoming Reserve, for those who don't know, it's an Opportunity Zone investment opportunity, unlike any that I have come across before. It's not real estate. It is a precious metals vault. So you're investing in an operating business with exposure to gold and silver. This one's been around for about a year now, is when I first started talking with this group. I've had them on the podcast. They were featured on OZ Pitch Day earlier this year. They were on our spring event. But what's news about them is that I just did a site tour with them, Andy, about, I think it's been a couple months now. And on Wednesday, the site tour video will actually be ready, and we're officially launching it. But I wanted to give everybody just kind of a behind the scenes peek. So this is me opening up the vault door. Their vault is fully up and running and operational in Casper, Wyoming. So I got to meet with their CEO, Josh Fair, and he let me handle some of the gold and silver that's in the vault. We got to walk into the vault. We got to walk around their offices. Here's me holding a whole bunch of silver bars.
Looks heavy.
So this is a little bit of a first look at what this site tour video is going to look like. Again, we're going to officially launch this site tour video later this week on Wednesday. So in less than 48 hours, that site tour video will be up and running. And in the meantime, if you want to learn more about the Wyoming Reserve, you can head to our website, OpportunityZones.com. We have a little bit of information about them in our fund directory, or you can head straight to their website, thewyomingrreserve.com. Andy, all of our, pretty much the vast majority of OZ funds, OZ deals that we feature on this news show and feature at OZ Pitch Day are real estate focused, but it's always good to remember that there are some non-OZ opportunities out there, some of them rather eclectic, some of them very unique, and there's certainly some unique advantages to this particular one, especially if you're a gold or silver bull. Andy, what are your thoughts on precious metals, OZ investing, in that intersection?
Well, I think it's super interesting, and I agree with you. I mean, I love real estate, but variety is the spice of life. So it's nice to see some of these other asset classes. And, we were talking with the Wyoming Reserve team, and there are so many gold and silver investors, precious metals investors. There's, huge communities on the internet. So I think that on Wednesday when this video debuts, I think it's going to get a lot of interest. I think it'll get a lot of traction on YouTube because there's just a lot of excitement around that asset class. And I think even with real estate investors, I think a lot of real estate investors are also interested in precious metals, just the idea of a tangible asset, of a real asset, right?
Yeah, non-correlating alternative asset that isn't real estate. It's not stock, it's not bond, it's not real estate. It's the world's oldest store of value, gold. So it's a pretty interesting way to get some exposure to gold and an operating business in an OZ. And there's a lot of other tax benefits that they've stacked into this thing. I won't belabor those points because I can talk about them for an hour probably. But with that said, I think we can move on to our next story. And thanks to the folks at the Wyoming Reserve for giving me the opportunity to come to Casper and check out their facility there. It's really quite phenomenal.
Absolutely. And Jimmy, before our election update, did you have one more tip of the cap?
I did have a tip of the cap. You wanted me to talk about the U.S. Navy here, I think, Andy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know if the Navy is going to the playoff like the Detroit Tigers, but I think they're undefeated this year, their football team, which is more than Notre Dame can say. And beyond just the U.S. Naval Academy, the U.S. Navy is using an Opportunity Zone fund to expand their submarine building capacity. They are going to use funds from an Opportunity Zone fund set up by CapZone Impact Investments. The name of the fund is the United Submarine Alliance Qualified Opportunity Fund. Now, Andy, you'll notice that the United Submarine Alliance, the acronym for that is USA. So this is called the USA Fund for short. It launched earlier this month, and they acquired this site on the Mobile River in Mobile, Alabama, on Pinto Island. They're going to be taking over an existing shipyard, renovating it, redeveloping it, and expanding it to produce more nuclear submarines of the Virginia class and Columbia class. I'm going to load up the Wikipedia page for Virginia class submarine because I don't really know a whole lot about submarines, but I looked up the Wikipedia page. This is what this Opportunity Zone fund is going to help facilitate the construction of this U.S. Navy Virginia class nuclear submarine, Columbia class submarine as well. And on top of that, it's going to create up to 3,000 new jobs in the Mobile Naval Yard, Andy. So congratulations to the U.S. Navy. Congratulations to CapZone Impact Investments, and congrats to all of their investors and the folks who will be building these nuclear submarines in Mobile for the next several years here. It takes a long time to build each one of these nuclear submarines, and you can take 7+ years to build each one of these things. So it's a little bit more involved building a submarine than just building an apartment building. So I think this one's going to be around for quite a while, and it's going to help ensure that these submarine builders can meet the U.S. Navy's goals. Because the fact of the matter is our Navy's kind of fallen behind over the past generation in terms of shipbuilding, and we need to kind of ramp up production. So this Opportunity Zone Fund is actually making a real impact for our nation's defenses as well as some local jobs in Mobile. So congratulations to them.
Absolutely. Wow, that's a cool story. A couple very unique OZ
I knew you'd like
funds.
that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jimmy, on that note, I want to do our election update. As our listeners and viewers are probably aware, we are very focused on the Opportunity Zone's tax incentive, which is an expiring tax incentive. And so this presidential election, the stakes are absolutely huge. Jimmy, can you bring up the odds? Your odds of choice are these that we're going with the betting odds. Is that right?
I like Polymarket is my favorite site over the last few months here, Andy.
So we are still sitting at a coin flip, Jimmy. Is that right?
Pretty much, according to the betting markets. Depends on which day you check, but either Kamala Harris is on top by 1 point or Donald Trump is on top by 1 point over the last several weeks here. It's neck and neck.
And Jimmy, it's interesting because it felt like over the summer, there was so much political news. I mean,
and you can see how volatile the market was over the summer too. Look, I mean, Trump started, April, May, well below 50%, and then moved up, briefly touched 70% and beyond, dropped again once Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden below what do you get down to? 44% was his nadir. And now it's kind of steadied out over the last few weeks here. He's kind of hovered between 47 to 53% and currently sits just below 50%.
And Jimmy, it's interesting though, because after such an eventful summer, or the middle of the summer, I should say, that June, July time period, it really has been pretty quiet in the last 30 days since our last episode.
October is tomorrow, Andy. You know what they say about October surprises.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, there really hasn't been much change at all. I mean, I think it was a coin flip the last time we did this show. So this is a very, very, very tight election. I know a lot of people in our industry are watching it very closely because of the impact that it's going to have on the future of the Opportunity Zones tax incentive. Jimmy, that being said, have your thoughts changed at all since last time we did the show? Every show I like to ask you your prediction, but before I even ask you for your percent odds, do you think anything has really changed, or are we just sort of in this steady state?
I think did we have the debate between our last episode and this one? I think we did. I think we had a debate a few weeks ago. But that seems to have not really changed anything. I think most voters are more or less entrenched in their positions. And I don't know. I don't really think much has changed, honestly, Andy, unless I'm missing something.
No, I would agree. It's certainly compared to the last few monthly news cycles, this has been a very quiet month, but I don't expect this coming month to be nearly as quiet as this past month was in the election. Jimmy, what is your percentage odds prediction? Kamala Harris wins versus Donald Trump wins the presidency.
Well, I'm a little bit more optimistic about Trump's chances than the betting market. I don't know why. Maybe I'm a fool, but last month I said 60% chance of Trump getting elected. I'm going to stick with that. I think he's got a 60% chance of getting elected.
And percent chance that you think the Opportunity Zones program will get renewed past its expiration, its upcoming expiration?
I think it's probably about, I don't know I don't even remember what I said last month, Andy, but I'm going to say it's about 50-50 probably.
Interesting. Okay. Well, for myself, I do think the election is a toss-up, and we got a comment that Polymarket is bunk, and Polymarket might be bunk, but it does feel like this election is a toss-up right now to me. So to me, it does feel like 50-50. But I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about the Opportunity Zones program being renewed than maybe I have been, Jimmy. I'm going to put that at 50-50 because, I think if Trump gets reelected, more than likely the program will get renewed. But I also think if Kamala Harris, I think it's unlikely, but there's always a punter's chance. There's always a scenario where, if she were president, that there's, horse trading being done as, there's tax cuts expire. There's going to be tax legislation next year, right? And probably will be tax reform changes in tax law in the next several years regardless. And there's just always a chance that it somehow gets into the mix and gets renewed even by a Democratic president in a slightly different form, with tweaks to the program so it looks a little bit different. So overall, big picture, I would put that as a coin flip as well. But I think the most interesting prediction, Jimmy, we'll do this again in a month. We'll get both of us on the record for our final predictions prior to the election.
That's pretty wild. We've only got one more to go before the election. Although, Andy, there is a chance that maybe we'll record at the end of November and we still won't know who won, which is the case sometimes.
Oh, what are the chances of that, Jimmy? I mean, these battlegrounds.
I don't know what the chances of that are, but it's happened. It's happened once in our lifetime, I think, that we didn't know for sure who won at the end of November. I'm thinking back to the Bush-Gore election of, I think that was 2000, and they had to litigate that through the courts for several weeks before they finally declared Bush the winner in Florida. Something about hanging chads is what I remember from that one, Andy.
Jimmy,
Andy, I brought up, I think we're focused a lot on the presidential election, but I want to also focus on the overall balance of power, because I think whether or not opportunity zones get extended is a function of what kind of tax legislation that we see at the end of 2025. And I think that largely depends on, yes, the president, but also who holds the balance of power in Congress as well. So who holds the House and who holds the Senate. And I think a Republican sweep is probably the best outcome purely for opportunity zone enthusiasts. If the opportunity zones have the best chance of getting renewed and extended if the Republicans sweep, if they hold the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. And according to Polymarket, there's a 29% chance of that happening. If there's a split, there's about a 50% chance that there's some sort of split. I think tax legislation is going to get really dicey. And in fact, there may not be any comprehensive long-term tax legislation that gets passed. There might merely be like a 2-year kick the can down the road type of scenario where they pass a spending bill, but no major tax legislation gets enacted. Now, the third outcome, Andy, there's a 21% chance of a Democrat sweep. That actually might be more favorable for opportunity zones than a split, because at least if the Democrats sweep, we'll get some sort of tax legislation. And if we can put aside the politics of opportunity zones, there are a lot of Democrats who, not so vocally now, but very vocally in the beginning, did support opportunity zones as a policy. Senator Cory Booker coming to front of mind right there. If he is involved in some sort of tax legislation in 2025, I like opportunity zones' chances of getting passed, even under a Democratic White House, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate. There is a chance. That's kind of my thought on that, Andy. But I think Republican sweep certainly is the most favorable outcome for the opportunity zones legislation.
Yeah, and that's interesting, Jimmy. And I know that you're in a couple other private groups where, you know, some of this is discussed, and it really is. It is hard to predict. I mean,
It is.
even if you knew exactly the composition of the House and Senate, even if you knew that in advance, it still is always unpredictable. You know, if you think about when the House goes into votes, and they generally, you know, on controversial votes, they are still whipping votes 5 minutes before, you know, before the actual roll call and before the vote. And sometimes the total number of votes they have is different than what they thought they had.
Yeah.
Going in.
And even, Andy, even going back to 2017, when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed, very few people expected opportunity zones to get into that final bill. It surprised even those who were closely tracking opportunity zones before the opportunity zones became law. There were a lot of people tracking the progress of that potential legislation dating all the way back to 2015, 2016, 2017. And then finally, like kind of last minute, it got packaged into the final draft of the bill and was eventually enacted. And it caught a lot of people by surprise. We got another comment here from Arnold that says, and I kind of relate to this and don't disagree, apart from polls and betting markets, if you listen to the chatter online, you get a sense of dissatisfaction in the status quo and a desire to get back on track and dig out of the current malaise. Thanks for that comment. Don't know that I disagree with that one, Andy.
Yeah, Jimmy, that may represent your percent odds that Trump wins the election at 60% instead of 50%. It may be that sort of X factor, as Arnold suggests. You know,
well, I find it interesting that both candidates are running as
the change
candidate. Yeah. Even though Vice President Kamala Harris has been in the administration for the last almost 4 years now, she's the change candidate.
Right. It's, you know, in theory, that should be hard to pull off. But if you look at the polling, it is neck and neck in all of these battleground states. So nothing to do at this point, but see what unfolds. And it may just come down to turnout. Of course, it usually does in a close election. So we'll have to see. Jimmy, that's about it for today's show. But before we run out of time, I want to ask you, what is your pick of the month? What are you watching, reading, or listening to in the world of opportunity zones that you would like to recommend to our listeners?
Well, Andy, I'm reading this feature story on Globe, Arizona, as featured in Business View magazine. I got sent this in the mail, a couple of hard copies of this. Andy, I've got one for you too. So the next time you come over, or maybe I'll send it out to you. A feature on Globe, Arizona. I should note that Monterey Globe is one of our OZ Pitch Day sponsors this year. The Wyoming Reserve is as well. I failed to mention that earlier. Thank you to both of them for sponsoring OpportunityDB and OpportunityZones.com. But really nice feature story on Globe, Arizona, with a little bit about their community being revitalized. It's almost entirely, if not entirely, in an opportunity zone. And Monterey Globe is working on building this Marigold Village community. They have a nice full spread advertisement in here. So congratulations to Tess and her team at Monterey Globe for making the cut on this magazine. Really nice little feature that they got in here in Business View magazine. And thank you again, Tess Young, for sending that over to me.
Absolutely. Lovely project, really interesting and unique project. So we've had lots of unique projects today in today's show, Jimmy. My pick of the month, outside of Vistaprint and the mug that you all sent me, is
By the
OZ
way,
Pitch
I gotta say, you bashed Vistaprint. Mine came out pretty good. I don't think mine's crooked at all. I don't know what happened on yours. Maybe we'll get you a new one though, Andy.
Well, you know, Jimmy,
mine looks pretty solid.
I know. Well, okay. As I said, as my original business mentor told me, good, fast, and cheap. Pick 2 out of 3. Mine was shipped to me very quickly, so it was fast and cheap. Yours did not arrive until several days later, but then the logo was not crooked, so yours was good and cheap.
Good and cheap, but not fast. Yeah, good point.
So,
good point.
Yeah. Maybe they rushed mine out and then noticed that the logo was crooked, and they said, all right, well, let's not send the second one that way. We'll go back to the drawing board and do the second one correctly. And that took some time. My pick of the month, OZ Pitch Day, which is coming up.
I love that.
Soon. Yeah, right after the election, November 14th. You can go to ozpitchday.com, or better yet, visit our brand new homepage at OpportunityZones.com. Click on the big old register now button. This is shaping up to be a very busy event, Jimmy. I think all of the fund slots are definitely going to be filled up. There's always really good educational panels. I always enjoy your keynote, Jimmy. It's always, not to pump your ego anymore, but it's always a very popular keynote where you walk everyone through Opportunity Zones 101. So I'm really looking forward to this. And again, anyone who's interested in registering, it's absolutely free. You do have to register though. It's free to register and then attend on any device. I usually attend on my mobile phone. You can also dial in on desktop computer or television, Jimmy. I guess you could do it on television.
You could. It has to be an internet connected device with a display. So you can't do it through your washing machine. But most internet connected devices that have a display and speakers, you're in business.
Absolutely. So make sure to join us for that. We've had over 10,000 investors register for Pitch Day in its long and storied history. But I truly do think this is going to be the best event yet. I think we're going to close out 2024 with a bang. So I'm very excited. Again, you can go to OZ Pitch Day or OpportunityZones.com to learn more and to register for free. And with that, Jimmy, that's it for today's show. We'll be back in a month with our next edition of OZ NewsHour. Thank you for watching and listening, and to all of our commenters today who joined the live stream and talked in the chat. We really appreciate that. It's fun to do that in a live show. So thanks again for watching and listening. And Jimmy, thank you for joining me today. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Andy. Go Tigers.
All right.